Senator Baldwin is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Raimondo, as we discussed last week, I hold our federal research mission in the highest regard. I think I shared that my grandfather who raised me was an NIH-funded researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. As Commerce Secretary, you will enforce the Bayh-Dole Act, which dictates how technology developed with federal research dollars can be transferred to the private sector. Bayh-Dole retains some rights over new inventions for the federal government in order to protect the public interest. It also includes a requirement that these cutting-edge inventions be manufactured in the United States. At the very end of the Trump administration, NIST proposed a new rule that would prohibit the federal government from reasserting its ownership rights over an invention if a private company is charging too much. In the middle of a pandemic and a recession, it doesn't seem like the right time for us to limit the government's ability to make products Americans need more affordable. So in fact, I believe that innovations that are paid for by the American taxpayer should be used to improve the lives of the American people. Governor, will you work with me to amend or change this rule so we can create jobs and provide Americans affordable access to new cutting-edge products?
Thank you, Senator, for bringing that up, as you did the other day. And yes, I will commit to working with you. I will also say that in my time in the private sector as a venture capitalist, we worked extensively with universities around tech transfer. And so I do have some familiarity with the power of how many jobs you can create if you harness that sort of technology. And NIST is, a leader in that.
Thank you. The Department of Commerce also has the opportunity to play an important role in ensuring that our nation's infrastructure is more resilient to the effects of climate change and extreme weather events. In Wisconsin and throughout the Midwest, that means infrastructure that can withstand severe flooding that is occurring with increased regularity. My bipartisan Built to Last Act would help ensure federal, state, and local and private infrastructure is more resilient by equipping those who develop building codes with the best available climate information and technical assistance if needed. The bill includes directives for NOAA and NIST, and it could be carried out by executive action. So, Governor, if confirmed, do I have your commitment to supporting climate resilient infrastructure, including efforts like those in my bipartisan Built to Last Act?
Thank you. I look forward to learning more about what is in the bill specifically. But certainly, again, I'm a governor of a coastal state. We are uniquely vulnerable to the harms of climate change. I understand the value of shoring up our infrastructure, and we look forward to working with you on the issue.
Thank you. In 2013, I successfully worked to reopen the process at NOAA that allows states to nominate their nationally significant marine areas for federal protection as national marine sanctuaries. And Wisconsin has nominated an area of Lake Michigan. This proposal required and garnered tremendous local support, and a wide range of stakeholders have worked together for years to plan and advocate for to protect and celebrate this really remarkable resource. Do you support the mission of NOAA's Marine Sanctuary Program? And if confirmed, would you ensure that the pending designation process for the Wisconsin Marine Sanctuary moves forward without delay?
So thank you for bringing this up and for advocating. I do support the process, and I will assure you I will look into the details of that and, move it forward to the best of my abilities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Governor, I appreciated our opportunity to have a good discussion on a number of critical issues yesterday, so thanks for your time. And I'm going to follow up on some of those in my remarks. One thing that I didn't get to ask you about was this issue that you highlighted in your testimony today, which I watched and I thought was very powerful. Good paying jobs, and the story about your dad losing a job. I think that's going to be critical as we're in this recession. And to be honest, one of the things I'm worried about, we've had a huge development in America with regard to the energy sector. This is everything: renewables, clean energy, oil, gas, where we have become the dominant player in the world. Pretty remarkable. Almost everybody thinks that's a good thing, to be the superpower of energy. Again, all of the above energy, and it definitely produces millions of good jobs. It's reduced greenhouse gas emissions with the revolution in natural gas, stretched budgets for families. But one concern I have, I'm having a hard time finding anyone in the incoming Biden cabinet who will be an advocate for a strong energy sector in America. This, to me, seems like a very basic, non-controversial proposition. And in fact, out of the gates, some of the Biden administration's moves seem to be directly targeted at actually killing energy sector jobs or related sectors. So can I ask you to commit to being that advocate, given your important position, should you be confirmed, for the energy sector, broad-based, everything, renewables, clean energy, wind, as you've been a leader in, but also traditional energy, oil and gas, and certainly not to be an advocate for targeting, putting thousands of people out of work in this sector, which has already happened in the first week of the Biden administration. Can I get your commitment on that?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your time yesterday. Obviously, as Commerce Secretary, I will not be playing a primary role on President Biden's team as it relates to energy policy, but I will do everything within my power to help create jobs for American people. And as it relates to NOAA, I think that as Commerce Secretary, should I be confirmed, I will have the opportunity to help create thousands of jobs with offshore wind in particular.
Let me, well, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that, again, there shouldn't be discrimination against good-paying jobs, and I'm starting to feel that there is, and we shouldn't have that in our country, particularly as we're in a recession. Let me talk, and again, I really appreciated our opportunities to chat yesterday. I just want to get your commitments that we talked about. Having broad-based sustainable fisheries is going to be critical for America. You will be the leader in this if confirmed, overseeing NOAA. As I mentioned yesterday, over almost two-thirds of all fish harvested in the United States come from Alaska. So we are the superpower of seafood. No offense to my colleague, Senator Scott, who's sitting right next to me from Florida. But can I get your commitment to work with me on surveys, on data, to make sure the United States and my state continue to have the most sustainable, best managed fisheries in the world?
So first let me say that in my state, we have over 4,000 people who make a living commercial fishing, and they have for generations. They did, their father did, their grandfather did. And I understand how important that part of the economy is in your state. And you have my strong commitment to work closely with you on making sure that the surveys and the stock assessments, et cetera, are fact-based, science-based, and we really take into account the needs and concerns of the fishermen and the stakeholders in your state.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciated your discussion of your own background on fisheries. I think that's going to be critical if confirmed as you come in to this role. Finally, on an area that we talked about yesterday, and I will have more questions for the record to submit, but on the healthy oceans, can you commit to working with me and other members of the Senate in a bipartisan way on the implementation of the Save Our Seas 2.0, which Senator Whitehouse and I were able to get over the goal line and signed by President Trump in December, which Congressional Research Service called it the most comprehensive ocean cleanup legislation ever to come out of the Congress. A lot of the implementation that will be under your leadership if confirmed.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, thank you very much, Senator Sullivan. Before I recognize Senator Peters, let me say we have 11 members who have not yet asked questions. 13 members have asked questions. And we have a vote at noon, which we'll work through. But I do ask members to stick very closely to the 5-minute rule. Senator Peters.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Governor Raimondo. It's certainly great to see you, and congratulations on your nomination and your willingness to serve in this capacity. Certainly, I enjoyed our opportunity to talk at length on a number of these issues prior to this meeting. And among the many things that I learned, I was very pleased to know your very strong family connections to the state of Michigan from your husband and all of your in-laws up in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And those Michigan roots that you have in your family are wonderful, and happy to hear that. And I also appreciate, and you've said, talked about the story again in today's hearing about your father's struggles related to manufacturing and the need for us to make sure that we have a strong manufacturing sector in this country. I know it's something that you feel very passionate about. And if this pandemic has taught us anything, it's that our domestic manufacturing and that our supply chains are vulnerable because we have not prioritized and coordinated manufacturing policy at the federal level in a way that we should. I believe you can't be a great country if you don't actually make things. And in order to do that, we need to lean in, given the fact that although we have 58 different manufacturing programs within the federal government, they're spread out over 11 different federal agencies. There's duplication, there's wasted resources, and there isn't a singular vote. And when we talked earlier, I talked about legislation that I've proposed to create a National Institute of Manufacturing that would give that unified voice and that coordinated strategy that some of our main competitors, like South Koreans and Germany's, are engaged in to allow us to compete effectively. It would establish a chief manufacturing officer, require a national strategic plan for manufacturing, and elevate National Manufacturing Council, something that has been basically defunct over the last 4 years under the Trump administration. Build out manufacturing.gov as a one-stop hub for small and medium manufacturers to get additional help to make sure that their businesses are as successful as possible, as well as create a national institute. So my question for you, Governor, is if confirmed as Secretary, will you commit with this committee and with me to elevate manufacturing policy generally, perhaps speak to that, as well as strengthening our industrial sector by addressing some of the items that I brought up?
So thank you for that question. I will wholeheartedly commit to should I be confirmed, using all of the strength and tools of the Commerce Department to do everything I can to bolster manufacturing. As I said, it's important to me. It's how I was raised. I've worked very closely as my time as governor with the Rhode Island manufacturers, and would look forward to working closely with you as well.
Well, thank you for that. One of the big challenges facing smaller manufacturing industries and domestic producers is unfair trade from foreign governments. We have an issue in Michigan with our cherry growers. We're cherry capital USA, tart cherry producers, but they are facing significant unfair trade from Turkey. That's had a significant negative impact on their ability to produce. quite frankly, it's an existential threat. I've introduced legislation to empower the Commerce Department to be more actively engaged in self-initiating enforcement actions to help smaller manufacturers, smaller producers like cherry growers. You know, in Michigan, we have cherry growers who are facing this competition, and in order to fight back, they had to raise millions of dollars to take the case forward. These are small growers that don't have the money to put up to do that because they're struggling just to keep their operation functioning. And they really need a partner. And I certainly believe that the federal government can be that partner for those industries that can't hire an army of lawyers and economists to fight these trade actions. I'm working on legislation, self-initiation legislation with Senator Burr, a bipartisan basis. And certainly, if confirmed, would love to have your commitment to work on how we strengthen our ability to push back on unfair foreign competition for our small industries, small manufacturers, and others that are being impacted by this activity.
Thank you for bringing it up. You brought it up the other day. I hear your passion to stick up for the cherry industry. Absolutely, we'll work with you. We'll also commit to making commerce more accessible to the small companies and farmers, and work with Secretary Vilsack to do that. I think, as I told you, every year on his birthday, I make my husband a cherry cake with Michigan cherries. So on this one, you had me in hello.
Well, that's wonderful, Governor. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you very much, Senator Peters. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Governor, thank you for your time yesterday in order to work through some of these questions. I do appreciate the time that you gave me on the phone, and appreciate some of your comments that you made. I know that a lot of people have focused on the seas and fisheries, but instead of the high waves, I'm going to take you, or the high seas, I'm going to take you up there to spectrum. And let's look at the utilization of spectrum. And of course, the NTIA and their positioning in making certain that they're properly managing broadband, they're properly managing spectrum by the federal government. So we talked a little bit about 5G yesterday and having that 5G telecommunications network. And so a simple yes or no for the record, do you or do you not support nationalization of a 5G telecommunications network?
I do not. I share your concerns about a nationalized 5G network.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's look at the broadband mapping. We talked a little bit about the importance of getting rural America online and connected. And mapping is a big part of this. You have the 477 maps that FCC and NTIA have worked to complete. And so how do you plan to leverage the National Broadband Availability Map in making policy recommendations for rural internet access, putting a distinction between those areas that are unserved and underserved?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. So first, let me just say I look forward to working with you and learning from you on this, and you have my commitment to prioritize underserved areas, including rural and tribal areas. I have heard for the past 10 months from many governors, Republican and Democrat alike, all across America, about how many of their citizens don't have access to broadband, which means they can't go to school, go to the doctor, sign up for a vaccine. I commit to having a strong NTIA, a spectrum strategy, looking at the maps, looking at ways to share spectrum, looking at ways to find spectrum to be available, so that we can close the digital divide. It's not a luxury good. I mean, everybody deserves access to broadband.
if I may, you use putting the emphasis on underserved. What we need to do and have to do is put the emphasis on unserved areas, those that have nothing. What got the federal government, I think, quite frankly, into a little bit of a problem during the Obama and Biden stimulus was they allowed underserved. That is why you have some cities that have a gig, and right outside that city limit, you have nothing. So, Governor, I would just highlight with you that is a very important distinction. And we need to prioritize these unserved areas because you cannot, as we discussed yesterday, have access to 21st century economic development, healthcare, education, or law enforcement without access to high-speed internet. Privacy Shield, we talked a little bit about Privacy Shield yesterday. So how do you plan to continue the Privacy Shield negotiations with the Europeans?
Thank you. As I said, I understand the Privacy Shield is necessary for many companies, especially small companies who rely upon transfers of data. So I intend to, should I be confirmed, prioritize finalizing the negotiations so we have a successor agreement that enables these businesses to conduct their business.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I'll go back. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Governor Raimondo, Senator Blackburn hammers home a very important point. There's $1.3 billion in broadband grants, $1 billion for tribal areas, $300 million for broadband deployment in unserved areas. We absolutely have to make sure that money is devoted to unserved, absolutely unserved areas, and make sure that those funds are not used to overbuild areas that already have some service. So I'm glad we've re-emphasized that point again. Senator Duckworth, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governor Raimondo. Congratulations on your nomination. I enjoyed speaking with you last week, and I'm confident that your executive experience working with business to grow the economy in your home state of Rhode Island will prepare you well to lead the Commerce Department. In my view, I think Commerce is one of the more underrated departments in the federal government, and with strong leadership and robust funding, Commerce could play a critical role in helping American manufacturers, small business owners, and entrepreneurs commercialize products, reach new customers, and hire even more workers. I'm going to turn my volume up just a little bit. Sorry about this. On that note, I wanted to note how we can do to promote American innovation, supporting long neglected communities, and leveling the playing field for U.S. companies competing with foreign competitors. There are three programs in particular I'd like to discuss with you, which we did talk about when we met last week. First, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. One of the most pivotal programs overseen by Commerce is the MEP. My state's partner organization with the MEP network, IMEC, delivers incredible value to Illinois small businesses and manufacturers by helping improve their operations, implement long-term strategies, commercialize their products, and grow their companies. And last year, IMEC helped small businesses in my state weather the COVID-19 crisis and assist others at a very critical moment in our fight against the pandemic. For instance, when a company in Bensonville wanted to remake some of its products to help first responders, healthcare workers, service members, and food service providers to decontaminate N95 masks quickly, they turned to IMEC to make sure that they were fully compliant with available guidance and working with the right government partners in the fight against COVID. Now, I know that you had the same success story in Rhode Island itself. Your own Polaris MEP helped connect your state with a nearby manufacturing company to produce vitally needed PPE gowns last year. And I imagine you share my confusion when you heard that the Trump administration in every single budget has sought to eliminate all federal funding for MEP, not once, but in every single budget that they have put forward. Seeking to eliminate MEP, which is enthusiastically supported by Democratic and Republican members alike, may have been one of the most short-sighted and unbelievable proposals that Trump administration sent up the hill. I was pleased to join broad bipartisan majorities in Congress on multiple occasions to not only reject Trump's effort to gut the MEP program, but to go further in increasing funding in fiscal years 2020-21. Governor Raimondo, can you describe your experience working with the MEP as governor of Rhode Island and provide your commitment to work with me in championing even greater federal investments in IMEC, Polaris MEP, and the entire MEP national network?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I have had a fantastic experience here in Rhode Island with our MEP program. And I am a strong supporter of the MEP program. President Biden has said he would like to have it expanded, which is something I support. I think I've been clear today that I should confirm, I would like to be a champion for the American worker, but American manufacturers, and do everything I can, including executing MEP, to expand the industry, promote innovation, and help be a leader in manufacturing.
Thank you. Would you also show the same support for the EDA, Economic Development Administration, the EDA program, especially prioritizing President Biden's proposal to establish a new EDA division focused on helping disadvantaged communities get ahead? And will you help my office with some technical assistance to help us codify this effort into law to ensure that it lasts through successive administrations?
Should I be confirmed, I will make sure you have full access to me and all the tools in the department to work with you on that. And again, as governor, I see how powerful EDA can be in a community for economic development, and I would look forward to leading with you in that area, in your state and every state.
Thank you. And my colleague from Michigan, Senator Peters, just talked about the cherry wars with the country of Turkey. And you and I chatted a little bit about steel dumping and how desperately needed the Department of Commerce is when it comes to businesses trying to settle trade disputes. If confirmed as Secretary of Commerce, how will you prioritize trade enforcement and work with other agencies to combat circumvention of our nation's trade laws through practices like the transshipping of goods, while providing small businesses with confidence that their interests will be aggressively represented in the trade remedy process? They can, by the time that they can bring their own case, they're out of business and bankrupt. They need your help.
Yes, I understand that. As I said, I think the American worker can compete if the rules are fair, and I will enforce to the fullest extent possible the rules that Commerce has to protect American workers and businesses, with a special eye to smaller businesses that struggle, as you say.
Would you consider having someone within your offices, like a trade czar or somebody who would head up that effort when it comes to trade disagreements?
You mentioned that the other day. I think it's a very interesting idea, and I look forward to learning more about it.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Cantwell, and thank you, Governor, for being not only nominated, but thank you for your testimony and your willingness to speak to me, as it seems like you've spoken to everybody, which is incredible. Last week, I enjoyed our conversation. We talked about some of the same issues that many people have brought up. I'm going to go to the EDA, first of all. You and I talked about how the EDA's presence in your state of Rhode Island, and I've talked about how impactful and what a growing impact EDA has had in our state. But I do have a question in terms of the president's proposed stimulus recommends an additional $3 billion for EDA. And I value and respect the focus of that. I have great concerns about an agency that has an annual budget of $330 million to be able to absorb not just the $3 billion that he's proposing, but also the $1.5 billion that we put in with the CARES Act. So how would you propose to be able to meet that capacity a challenge I think that EDA would have to make sure that the money's being spent not just thrown out, but also making sure that it's targeted, well spent, and efficiently spent. Do you have any ideas on that?
Yes, thank you. So first, let me say, as we rebuild post-COVID, I believe that the EDA can and needs to play a very strong and important role in the rebuilding to help Americans get back to work in their communities. Secondly, I understand your concern. You know, I have been governor for 6 years, a public executive for 10 years. Implementation matters. I have a strong track record of good management, transparency, and implementation. And what I will say to you is I understand the concern. It's obviously very valid. I need to get in the job and be confirmed, and we'll come back to you with your permission to have a discussion about, you know, whether there are any additional resources needed in EDA in order to effectively implement such a large infusion.
I would welcome that. I think that would be wise, and I think that would be a great way to address the challenge. I'm going to switch over to NTIA. I know some others have asked you about this, but we talked about broadband. In your state, you have more urban broadband issues. We have a lot of rural broadband. Certainly this committee has done a lot of work in this. But one of the areas that we've really fallen short is on the mapping situation. Who really is served, and to what degree are they served, and what can we do to more accurately deploy the federal resources to those that it's intended for, the unserved and underserved. And so I would just encourage you, West Virginia was one of the first 8 states to be in the broadband mapping. There are now 22 states that are in there. They're using state resources as well, because you can't just rely on the providers to tell you where they're serving, or just one state entity, I think, or federal entity. I think you need like an all hands on deck approach. And I know this is important to you for your state. Do you have any other perspectives on how we can get to that broadband mapping accurately when we see the urgency that the pandemic has brought for broadband deployment?
Thank you. I share your urgency on this, and as I've said, it is life-saving. People need access to broadband to go to the doctor, to go to school, to have a job. So I will commit to prioritizing it and also to engaging stakeholders. I have learned in my time as governor that if you talk to people on the ground, companies, constituencies, individuals, you have a better assessment of the challenges on the ground, and therefore, you know, better able to meet their needs.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. Sounds like a good governor approach to me at the same time. And lastly, I'll just mention, as I did to you, our NOAA facility that we're very proud of in Fairmont. We do a lot of supercomputing there. We also have the Enterprise Security Operations Center, which it does a lot of cybersecurity. You can imagine a lot of the data that is collected in the satellite sphere is very important to our national security, but also to our homeland security in terms of protecting life and property, in terms of being able to not just predict, but be able to front run certain kinds of what would potentially be weather disasters or other things. So I would just, I mentioned to you, I would invite you to come to Fairmont upon your confirmation, and to see the NOAA facility, and to see where the great folks in Fairmont can be more helpful and use that expertise that they combine with the educational centers to be able to enlarge the presence. And my time is done, and I listen to what my chairman says, and he says, stick to the time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Capito. Senator Tester.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, both chairmen, as a matter of fact, and I want to thank you, Governor, for being here. I come to you a bit blurry today, and I'm not even in Montana. I'm in D.C., which brings me to broadband.
I'm actually seeing double here on the screen.
Yeah, I know. Just close one eye and it'll be better. So I want to talk broadband a little bit, Governor. It's a 4 or 5-legged stool with the FCC, Rural Development, USDA, and NTIA. I think that is an incredible challenge in getting what many of the questions have talked about, and getting broadband built into unserved areas. Tell me if you've thought about this, number one, and number two, do you have some ideas on how to get the different agencies to work as one. I quite frankly think we ought to put it into one. I know there's some difficulties in doing that, but it's really tough to have accountability when you got 4 different agencies doing the same thing.
Yeah. So thank you for this. And I would just, again, want to reiterate that this will be a strong focus of mine, because I know it's a problem on tribal lands, rural, everywhere. I have learned in my time as governor a bit about how to break down silos in government. It is difficult, but I believe it is possible if we have a shared goal, as we will in this instance. It's bipartisan, it's necessary. We need to break down the silos and come together to achieve that goal. And I will just commit to you that I will lead on the issue and also collaborate, as you say, with the FCC, with other areas of government, in order to make sure we deliver for the American people. American people don't care about our silos and bureaucracy. They want us to deliver, and that's what I'll work on.
Well, I appreciate that. And just to show how effective you are, I am now in focus. So that's incredible work, Governor, already, and you're not even confirmed. Look, in Montana, the wood products industry is really an important industry. It creates a lot of jobs, provides lumber for building homes and corrals and everything else. The duties on softwood lumber, I would hope you would maintain that where they are now, because it's fair and it offers some opportunity for forest management and creation of jobs across Montana, across the West, and, across the whole country. Maine's also affected. And I'm sure Michigan and other places are too. So appreciate you doing that. I want to talk about the census just real quickly, because it's generally believed that because of the pandemic and because of this administration's inability to get things right, the census numbers aren't right. And I was wondering if you have any ideas on how to address that. I will tell you that I think it's a challenge in rural America, and it's particularly a challenge in Indian country, where the pandemic hit them very, very hard. Do you have any ideas on how to after the fact, try to get these numbers accurate?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I've worked hard here to make sure everybody's counted. As I said, first we have to take the politics out, and secondly, we have to listen to the experts. So I look forward to being confirmed and getting in the seat and really rolling up my sleeves and listening to the experts and relying on, in the Census Department, and relying on their assessment and evaluation as to how accurate the data is. And if they need more time, then certainly open to that.
Well, just to give you a data point, in Blackfeet, the self-response rate was 29%. And I think it's pretty similar to that all across the large land-based tribes in this country. And so there's a lot of work to do. Very quickly, because you've only got a minute and 20 seconds. China's been brought up a number of times. You've talked about your philosophy of free but fair trade. I think this administration has botched up the relationships with trade with China by quite frankly trying to go it alone, and I don't think you can do that. I think not only has the United States been impacted by China's currency manipulation and other things, but other countries are too. Can you give me an idea on how you're going to deal with China? Because they're not going to change unless they're forced to change. And just to stand up at a podium and scream and holler about how unfair things are isn't going to get it done. And so can you tell me what your plan for China is going to be as far as this country and other countries, and what your recommendations to Biden and the Biden administration are going to be when it comes to China?
So first of all, I would say we cannot underestimate the threat. Second of all, it has to require a whole of government response, and I will play my role in that if confirmed. Thirdly, I agree with you that we need to work with our allies, and we need to be very serious, because it's not fair what's happening to American workers.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tester. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Governor. Let me start out by apologizing if I ask you questions that you've already covered. I had to chair a business meeting on the consideration of Ali Mayorkas's nomination, which was reported favorably to the floor, so I'll apologize up front. I do want to cover Section 230 and the power of the social media companies. Let me just first start by asking you, do you believe the social media companies have amassed too much power, both commercially as well as from a standpoint of media and a role in censorship? But let's start just commercially, their ability to just deplatform businesses without any kind of recourse.
Well, I believe in competition and innovation, and as it relates to social media companies, I think they need to be held accountable for what they put on their platform. We need responsible online discourse and platform accountability.
That didn't really answer the question, though. Do you believe they've become too powerful? Do you think the federal government does need to step in and take some kind of action, as unclear what that action really should be?
That is an issue that I think I would leave to Congress and the FTC, but as I said, I believe in competition, and I think that it's important that we look at the social media companies in that regard.
There are really, from my standpoint, two components of Section 230 liability protection. One is protection from what people load onto your platform. The other one is in what they call their moderation policies. One of the things I think I proposed is leave in place the liability protection on what people load onto your platform, but really take a serious look at removing the liability protection for the fact that you maybe don't have transparent policies on how you do censor, how you do moderate, what your moderation policies are. Would you agree with that approach?
I would agree that we need some reform in Section 230, and I would look forward to working with you on that. I know you're a leader in this area, and I would use if confirmed, use the resources at NTIA to convene stakeholders, convene industry, consult you and other members of Congress to figure out the details of that reform.
I thought there's an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal written by Andy Kessler today, where he shares my concern that if Congress gets involved in this, chances are we'll probably do more harm than good. But one of his proposal really was to end anonymity. When you have people being able to hop onto these social platforms completely anonymous, you end up with the result we have. I thought it was a pretty interesting proposal. What would you think about, the basic concept is the Facebooks and the Twitters of the world have to know their customers so that if there is incitement, if there are problems, those customers can be held accountable. Do you think that's something you could support?
As I said, I think platform accountability is important. Listen, I've seen in my own state that misinformation hurts people. You know, misinformation, posted anonymously or otherwise, can hurt people. So we have to hold these companies accountable. We need platform accountability. But of course, that reform would have to be balanced against the fact that these businesses rely upon user-generated content for their innovation, and they've created, you know, many thousands of jobs. So it's a complex issue. I know you're a leader in it, and I look forward to working with you.
Senator Johnson, let's put that Wall Street Journal piece in the record at this point. Is there objection to that?
Without objection.
Without objection, it will be done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my final minute, I want to revisit net neutrality. I'd rather not. I really applaud Chairman Pai in his courage against protests and threats of removing any types of policies that try to create net neutrality, which I think would have done just the opposite of what net neutrality sounds like it would do. I haven't seen people being throttled back. I haven't seen this be an issue. What I've seen is continued investment in the internet, which is why Chairman Pai instituted those orders. Where do you stand on net neutrality? I'm hoping and praying this administration is going to re-raise that issue.
I have been in favor as governor, and I'd say generally in favor of policies which create more of a level playing field and more equal access.
It seems that Mr. Chairman has left. Let me just follow up on that. Do you agree with me that it has not been, you know, since Chairman Pai acted, we have not seen a real problem in not having some of these net neutrality rules in place? I mean, where's the problem? Is this a solution? Is this a solution looking for a problem?
As I said, I would look forward to working with you on this and to, in my capacity at Commerce, to the extent that there are levers in the Commerce Secretary's department, work with you on the issue.
Okay. Should I turn it over to Senator Sinema?
Yeah, Senator Sinema, thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairman, and thanks to Governor Raimondo for joining us today. You know, Arizona is one of the fastest growing states in the nation and is a leader in creating jobs, economic growth, and opportunity for the people of our state. The Department of Commerce's mission is to overcome obstacles to development and create the conditions for economic growth and opportunity. The department achieves that goal through agencies and bureaus that focus on many important issues like broadband development, the census, and drought information. I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues on this committee to develop bipartisan solutions to invest in Arizona and create the economic environment we need to continue to grow and succeed. Governor Raimondo, if you're confirmed for this important role, I look forward to working collaboratively to create good paying jobs and continue sustainable growth for all Arizona communities, from our largest cities to our rural and tribal areas. My top priority over the last year has been working with local, state, and federal partners to keep Arizonans healthy and safe from the pandemic. Now, it's put a spotlight on the digital divide in this country, and I encourage the NTIA to play a major role in expanding broadband. As you know, the last COVID relief bill included new opportunities for NTIA, including a $300 million program to promote broadband expansion to unserved rural areas and a $1 billion program for tribal broadband. What are your plans for broadband expansion, and can you commit to coordinating closely with rural communities and tribes to ensure that this funding is utilized effectively?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I will commit to working closely with you, your colleagues, rural communities and tribes, and listening to the rural communities and tribes around their needs and the challenges. Every American deserves access to high-quality broadband, and I'll use the full resources of NTIA, if confirmed, to lean into that issue and make sure we move quickly. COVID has shown that broadband can save lives, and everyone deserves to have it.
I agree. You know, one of my top issues is increasing domestic manufacturing of semiconductors. In recent years, other countries, including China, had given massive financial incentives to semiconductor manufacturers to build factories offshore. This has shrunk the United States' share of the semiconductor industry. And domestic manufacturing is not only an economic concern. The Defense Department has identified a secure semiconductor supply chain as a national security issue. I've been working with a bipartisan group of senators to advance the CHIPS Act. Last year, we authorized the Commerce Department grants for semiconductor manufacturing in the Defense Authorization Bill, but we have more work to do. Will you prioritize this issue as Congress works to bring these jobs back to our country?
Thank you. Yes, the semiconductor industry is vital to American economic and national security. And President Biden has been clear that we will have a whole of government approach to semiconductors. And I plan to play an active role on his team, as you say, making sure that we have jobs for economic security, but also national security issues loom large in this area. We need a resilient supply chain to be secure.
Agreed. The accuracy of the 2020 census is very important to my state. Arizona is one of the fastest growing states in the country, and we need to be sure the Census Bureau data is accurate. The previous administration harmed the nonpartisan history of the Census Bureau through attempts to add a last-minute citizenship question and prohibit the inclusion of undocumented persons in apportionment data. Also, the COVID-19 pandemic curtailed the ability of the Census Bureau to engage with Arizonans. So the Census Bureau will need to be transparent in discussing any shortfalls in the data that were collected due to limited operations. Can you commit to repairing the damage and improving relationships with historically undercounted communities today, ensuring accurate and cost-effective counts in the future?
Thank you, and you brought this up the other day as well. I commit to taking the politics out of census, relying on expertise, and doing everything I can to rebuild people's trust in the census. It needs to be accurate.
Thank you. In my last minute, I want to just briefly talk about NOAA. As you're aware, the Southwest United States continues to face an unprecedented drought, resulting in a wide range of impacts from wildfires to water shortages. In Arizona, we rely on water not only to brush our teeth and shower, but also for our economic security. And we are ready to work with other Western states to ensure we have a healthy watershed and continue to be responsible stewards of our water. We've got to use the best available science to make informed decisions. So will you commit to utilizing and strengthening programs such as NOAA's National Integrated Drought Information System to help us understand and address the impacts of this drought?
I will commit to working with you on that, and I understand how important it is to your state.
Thank you so much, Governor, and thanks for being here today. I appreciate it.
Senator Scott.
Thank you. Governor, thank you for the call we had the other day. We had the opportunity to talk about some of the issues that governors deal with, and I think it's positive when you see a governor come up and serve in an administration. One of the issues that we both dealt with as governors is the need for job creation and the need to try to keep the cost of living as low as we could for our families in our state that don't make significant amounts of money. I got into public service focusing on the fact that I want kids like me that grew up in public housing to have the same opportunity to live the dream as everybody else. And so what you're going to be doing as Secretary of Commerce, if confirmed, will be very significant, helping people all across the country make sure they have the same opportunity I had. In December of last year, you signed a memorandum with Connecticut, Massachusetts, and D.C. called the Transportation Climate Initiative, which is going to require suppliers of gas and diesel fuel to buy credits to sell them as early as 2023. In both of our states, the median income is just a little over $30,000 a year. So who's going to pay for this, and how is it going to impact the people that in both of our states don't make significant amounts of money? And I don't know if you track to see how much this is going to cost an individual.
Thank you for the question. So I believe that climate change is probably the greatest threat we face. And also there's an opportunity to create jobs as we combat climate change. 30+% of emissions come from the transportation sector. And so I allied myself with my fellow governors to agree to look into the issue. And that is where we are. You know, I support that. And I believe long-term it will actually create jobs.
So I think all of us are very focused on climate change and how we're going to make sure that we deal with that. And at the same time, we got to keep our economy going. So with what you've agreed to in the Transportation Climate Initiative, who will pay for that, and how will a family making, half the families, individuals in your state make less than $32,000 a year, how would they pay for that, and have you quantified it?
We have not yet. The document I signed, by the way, it was bipartisan, Republican and Democratic governors, was an intention to work together with our legislatures to develop a transportation climate initiative. So it's very early in the process.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The nominee for Transportation Secretary, Mayor Buttigieg, last week said he was receptive to increasing the gas tax. And again, this would be something that would impact the poorest families in our country significantly. What is your position on that? And do you think that how would that impact your ability to do your job as Secretary of Commerce?
Yes, so I would defer to Congress to make that decision. Let me say this. I, as governor, am deeply in touch with how much increasing bills affect the average American family. Having said that, we do need to meet the climate change challenge, and we need funds for improved infrastructure, better roads, safer bridges, and which also creates jobs. So I would look to balance those interests and work as a piece of the president's team.
The part of the Biden administration's proposal was a $15 minimum wage. And according to the Congressional Budget Office, 3.7 million people are going to lose their jobs as a result of that. And as we all know, as Secretary of Commerce, your job will be to figure out how to help our small businesses, help them prosper, and because that's most where our job creation is. So what is your position with regard to increasing the minimum wage and what impact that will have on our small businesses and our families across the country?
Yes, thank you. So I believe work ought to pay, and you shouldn't live in poverty if you work full-time. As governor, I've shepherded through several increases in minimum wage, and we have not seen any impacts on unemployment. And so as with all policies related to wages or commerce or competitiveness, I will consult broadly with stakeholders, with industry, and take a thoughtful approach. But I know many businesses also support that and believe that work ought to pay.
Thank you, Governor.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, a ranking member still, I guess, but thank you, Senator Cantwell, and Governor Raimondo. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your commitment to serving our nation. I really appreciated our productive meeting. I look forward to learning more about your plans to revive our nation's economy, to create jobs, and to ensure that every American has access to broadband, no matter where they live. Amidst a global pandemic that has devastated our economy, I urge this committee to facilitate a swift confirmation for Governor Raimondo so she can immediately get to work for our country. But I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about repealing solar tariff. The solar industry employs about 7,000 workers in Nevada, the most solar jobs per capita in the entire country. If we're to address the climate crisis and continuing to create those good-paying jobs in the energy sector, we must have a federal policy that promotes the affordable deployment of solar projects. Unfortunately, the previous administration imposed costly Section 201 tariffs on imported solar panels and cells. These misguided tariffs have cost us an estimated 62,000 solar jobs across the United States. In October, the Trump administration doubled down on this failed policy and directed the United States Trade Representative to increase the tariffs for 2021. The right move for the economy and the environment would be for President Biden to rescind this ill-conceived proclamation before it takes effect on February 7th. Given the extremely small solar manufacturing industry in the U.S. and the fact that nearly 90% of solar jobs in the U.S. are non-manufacturing jobs that rely on affordable solar panels, do you support the current tariffs on imported solar panels? And will you work with me to address this pressing issue and, of course, time-sensitive issue?
Yeah, so thank you, Senator. I understand from talking to you and your governor how important these solar jobs are in your state. And I look forward to learning more about it. Of course, I will work with you, and I understand it's time sensitive and challenging, and a lot of jobs are at stake.
I appreciate that. Usually we have nothing but sunshine in Nevada, but I hear today it is snowing on the Las Vegas Strip. So, but we'll have sunshine coming back soon. But speaking of the Las Vegas Strip, I want to talk about reviving our entertainment economy. Because in Nevada, while our economy continues to recover from the devastating impact of the pandemic, we're still facing one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. Nearly 500,000 jobs are part of Nevada's entertainment and tourism ecosystem. Unfortunately, our once vibrant creative arts community is now just struggling to stay afloat. Performers, their support staff, they've seen their work come to virtually a complete halt as venues are unable to open their doors during the pandemic. I know this is happening across the country. Theaters are shuttered, and elsewhere, like I said, in the country, film, television, sports events, all of it. All these productions shut down in an abundance of precaution. So as we work to create the conditions for economic growth and opportunity, what are your plans to specifically help the creative industries stay afloat and get back to work?
Yes, thank you. I hear you about Las Vegas. You mentioned it the other day. My state also depends heavily on tourism and hospitality, so I see it. I expect to play a real leadership role with Brand USA and work with you and the industry and collaborate to find creative ways to get folks, traveling again, going out to dinner and the like. Again, it's important. And of course, I support President Biden fully in his reinvigorated approach to get COVID under control, which gives people confidence to go out and travel.
Thank you. And my last question I think I'll have time for is about NIST and the cybersecurity workforce. The Department's National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, it plays an important role in supporting technological innovations and, of course, our STEM workforce. In particular, and I like this acronym, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, or NICE, is housed within NIST. It focuses on cybersecurity, education training, and workforce development. And according to their NICE Jobs current heat map, there are currently over 520,000 cyber job openings in the U.S. So in the interest of time, I have a few bills out there: cyber ready workforce, junior ROTC, cybersecurity workforce framework. We're working on all of this. What are your goals for supporting our cybersecurity workforce? 500,000 jobs open, probably more to be created. We know we've got lots more needs. Let's get folks into these jobs.
I could not agree more. I will work with you on it. I'll prioritize it. I have done that as governor. A big piece of that puzzle is job training, but I agree there are many jobs available and we ought to help Americans get them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your willingness to serve, and I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Young, are you there?
I am indeed, Chairman. Thank you. Governor, it's so good to be with you again. Enjoyed our conversation the other day, and I'll be following up on that. Once again, thank you for your willingness to serve and for appearing before the committee. We discussed during our conversation the overwhelming geographic concentration of venture capital investment in 3 states. And that concerns me. It's detrimental to the U.S. innovation base, especially at a time when the U.S. is going toe-to-toe with countries like China. So we need to harness more of that talent across the heartland of America and around all 4 corners of our country. That's why I co-authored the Endless Frontier Act with Senator Schumer. The bill would bolster U.S. leadership in science and tech innovation by making a $100 billion strategic investment in emerging technologies. Additionally, the bill will deliver $10 billion to establish regional tech hubs across the country to launch innovative companies, revive American manufacturing, and create new jobs to reinvigorate our local communities. So we're talking here about a technology policy for our country. We've got a clear plan to implement one. I would ask you, Governor, do you think the Endless Frontier Act would help expand entrepreneurship and fuel greater innovation through these new geographic regions outside the traditional tech hubs that we have around the country?
Thank you, Senator. I certainly share your concern that capital is concentrated in too few areas. By the way, my state is not one of them, so I live it, and would absolutely work with you to, disperse that. We've talked a lot today about how to compete with China, and we talked about tariffs and defense, but some of it is offense, which is investing in America innovation and doing that broadly. And so I would be excited to, work with you on that issue.
It is about offense, and we discussed this in our conversation together. I think I used the phrase that United States needs to outgrow, out-innovate, and out-compete China, and you agreed with that sentiment. If confirmed, in addition to perhaps the Endless Frontier Act and being supportive of that sort of initiative, are there any other steps that you might take to sort of execute on this mandate of outcompeting the Chinese, just as we outcompeted the Soviet Union?
Yes, well, there are many areas, and I'll be brief, but, one of the areas of commerce is NIST, which has a huge role to play in standard setting. And I believe America needs to lead in the standard setting, especially as it relates to new technology. I know you care a lot about artificial intelligence and blockchain. And so I feel that that's one way in particular that we could help Americans to compete and lead and win.
Very good, very good. I have about 1.5 minutes left. This is sort of how this works. Not a lot of time, but I'm going to pivot quickly to supply chain. And there's been a lot of talk about supply chain management and retrenchment of vulnerable supply chains in conjunction with this pandemic. We know that we are vulnerable. 95% of surgical masks and 70% of respirators were made overseas at the start of this crisis. Pharmaceuticals and medical equipment might be the most visible offshore sectors. As we begin to recover from this crisis, we need to secure these supply chains. And to maintain long-term investments, we have to ensure continuous demand for domestic production. If that's not ensured, no one's going to stand up a factory to build essential items. This demand can't just be a one-off spike. So with that said, sometimes the issue is not a lack of total demand, but a matching demand with supply, especially in localized markets spanning across the country. One strategy could be mapping out and exaggerating demand and exploring various incentives to support American companies with moving supply chains. If confirmed, how do you plan to facilitate reshoring domestic supply chains?
Thank you. First, I'll say it will be a priority because it will help us shore up our national security and economic security. And the technical resources of the Commerce Department are second to none in figuring out the complexities of how to execute on that.
Well, very good. I know our time has expired, so I'll look forward to working with you on that important issue, very important to the most manufacturing intensive state in the country, which is the state of Indiana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Young. And that concludes our questioning. Governor Raimondo, over the course of 2 hours and 37 minutes, you have been most patient and most talented in answering our questions. And I think you've learned a good bit about this committee during the process. I do not believe you will be serving as governor of the state of Rhode Island for very much longer. And I wish you well. Look forward to working with you. Senator Cantwell, do you have anything? If not, the hearing record will remain open until the end of this day. Senators are asked to submit any questions for the record by the close of business today, Tuesday, January 26, 2021. The committee asks the witness that upon receipt of any question for the record, you submit your written answers to the committee as soon as possible, but no later than the close of business on Monday, February 1st, 2021. This hearing is now concluded, and once again, we thank Governor Raimondo.